Well, it was a short-lived show, the BJ Bethel project that was 2025 to 2025. Now we are back with something a little bit different, a little branding, a little bit changing of the scenery here. In the
Yes.
words of Bruce Pitchard, another paint a coat. I think that's what he says at least. Welcome to Rent Free with BJ Bethel and Ruben J. BJ, real quick, we have to address the elephant in the room. What's with the name change?
Well, first of all, I was asking for name suggestions, and Mel from the Power Bombshells podcast, which I've been a guest on and a guest host, and Sam Shipman is an amazing writer and reporter. Mel is one of the most intelligent people that I know. Um, I've been a freaking guest, and she suggested you should just call it the Rent Free Podcast because of all the all the people that are angry at you all the time. And I'm like,
Love
for
it.
nonsensical reasons and for really not doing anything much to anger anybody. But and I thought it was brilliant. I'm just like, you should be in marketing. And she's like, nah, no, no. And I'm like, I wish I'd thought of that. So I was like, I sent that to you, and it was like, yes, this clicks. So anyway, this is the Rent Free Podcast now, which sounds much better than the BJ Bethel project. So I'm glad for the name change. It sounds much better. Thank you, Mel. Thank you, Sam. Thank you, Power Bombshells. And also want to say one thing. Mike and JD Oliva, Mike Gilbert, JD Oliva, they had to pause their podcast for a while. I've been friends with those guys for a little bit now, for a couple of years, and they've allowed me to come onto their show a lot of times, and they're just now kicking back up. Mike retired from the military, where he served distinguishedly, and moved cross country and getting his civilian life together. And him and Mike are back in him and JD Oliva are back in action, and they're two of the smartest guys I know. And I wouldn't want to fight either of them. One of them's a veteran, the other's a wrestler, a real wrestler, an amateur wrestler. So if I have to fight somebody and I have to pick a podcast duo to help me and Ruben out, we're picking those two guys. So
There we go.
anyway,
There we go.
there's the friend shout outs real quick. But yeah, a lot of
Well,
stuff going on.
yeah, it's going to be a jam-packed episode. But speaking of fighting, you did an interview that's up on your Substack and will be up on this podcast feed in a couple of days. You interviewed Christine Brennan, who has correct me if I'm wrong, a book about Caitlin Clark, correct?
Yeah, she has an unauthorized book about Caitlin Clark. Unauthorized means this wasn't an official biography. This wasn't an official memoir. Even though Clark answered tons of questions, I think she said 55, 60 questions over the course of a year
Wow.
for it, and never refused a question. But Christine Brennan, she works for CNN. She does appearances on there. She's been a long time sports columnist for the Washington Post and the USA Today now. But over the last year, she's been writing this book. And I think almost 12 months ago, I think 14 months ago, she made the deal in the middle of the season of Clark's WNBA rookie season for the book, maybe earlier. And within 12 months, it was number two on the New York Times bestseller list, which, if you read the book and you go over it and you see just how she weaves all these multiple narratives, it is definitely a tremendous feat of journalism. It is a fast, amazing read, which is another remarkable thing. It is one of the most impressive things I've come across as a writer and a journalist. Um, and
The
we
subject
really
matter is
get into
incredible
some issues.
too.
Yes, I mean it gets into Clark, it gets into issues with the WNBA, it gets into like the history of Title IX. It goes through like 100 years of like high school girls basketball in Iowa, and just what led up to what Clark becoming this superstar. And she interviews everybody from Billie Jean King to Harry Edwards to all these massive people, getting just because she's got access to everybody. You know, she's one of the top sports columnists ever. And it was really nice to get her to sit down and talk for. I think we talked for about 2 hours. We got about an hour and 15 minutes on podcast, and she was grateful. She answered every question. She did not dodge controversy one bit. She went right at it. She is definitely one of the best at this. If you want to learn how to be a journalist, and I know a lot of people look to me and ask questions and things like this, especially in the wrestling world, go listen to this podcast. Read read Christine Brennan whenever you get a chance. Buy this book. This book shows you how you can do something incredible in the width of a year. if you put your work to it and you just ask the questions and you stand by your scruples. And it was it's a great interview. She gets into like, the WNBA Players Association tried to have her banned from games because of a question she asked. I know that made a lot of news at the time. She goes into that in length. We talk about that. We talk about just about how the WNBA was woefully prepared for Clark's explosion into the league. They had no idea what was coming. We talked about how kind of she mentioned this is that the league seems to be very, very settled and fine with the league of top officials and the top players being big fish in a small pond. And I think Clark has completely rocked their reality. And what was once kind of a tax write-off for the NBA, and she takes shots at the NBA at this as well because they own the WNBA and they should have been preparing him for what was expected with Clark. And we talk about that. We talk about the Olympic snub. We talk about her season this year. There's been some, wild reactions to her book, which is all factual based. She's really done a good job of, weaving this stuff in, and it was important. I think this book's probably more important than most would be at this time because there's just so much. Clark is such a superstar, and it is so hard to find reliable information and facts on what's going on with her. And you will see AI videos, manipulated stories, everything, whether it's pro Clark, anti Clark, stuff about the WNBA. It's one of the worst propaganda, disinfo, AI rendered subjects I've ever seen. So to have someone like Brennan, who was a trendsetter and a glass ceiling breaker herself, to come in and take over this subject and provide a great kind of like record of official record of what happened in her first year with Clark and her senior year and this explosion into this megastar for Clark. It really is. It couldn't have, this book was a perfect subject at the perfect time with the perfect writer, and I think everybody should really go out and grab it and give it a good read. It is a fast read. I got through it in a few days, and you'll really become a lot. If you're a fan of sports, you got to buy the book. It's a great book.
Yeah, the book's called On Her Game, Caitlin Clark and the Revolution and WNBA. Go check that out when you have a chance. And of course, the interview will be up on this feed in a couple of days, and it's out over at bbethel.substack.com.
Yeah, if you check out my Substack, I got a podcast called BJ Interviews Anyone. It's just kind of a small part of my Substack. There's some other interviews over there with Hal McCoy, a longtime Reds writer. Also, interview with Carlos Holmes about NFL draft. He's a professional football scout. He also used to write for the Dayton Daily News. Also got interviews about the Iran bombing and just talking to a professor that was an expert in the field. Also, Lucha Blog, had a long discussion with him on the ramifications of AAA being bought by WWE. That's probably been one of the most popular podcasts I've had. He was a tremendous asset and a source, and almost everything he said in this interview a couple months ago was played out in reality. So check that out, and I think we're going to be trying to probably do a lot of this stuff where we put more of this together with rent-free, so there isn't much, of a mess. But I think the expert interviews are something people like to hear, and besides hearing me blab and you ask me questions and me get them wrong, I'm more comfortable asking the questions. But anyway, check out Christine's interview. It's fantastic, and it was really nice of her to spend as much time as she did talking and sharing her insights on sports journalism. And
yeah, please check it out. And speaking of more fighting, top of the show, I think the first thing that we have to talk about is this horrific scene out of is it Knox Pro Wrestling up in California here? Yes. With Rajah Jackson, son of MMA fighter Rampage Jackson, just going to town on a local indie wrestler to the point where I believe the rumor was that he had flatlined. Probably going to be out of work for a very, very long time after all this. It's an incredible situation, and not in a good way. The video is just horrific. I'd show the video here, but I'm afraid of being demonetized and it being,
Yeah,
flagged just
you
because of
can
how
find the
violent and how
video out
graphic it
there.
is.
Yeah, I actually talked to Jay Fowler tonight about the fight, and he went into some details of there are some wrestlers. I think Mark Henry, probably the most prominent. Rob Van Dam that have expressed support for Rajah in this situation, but they're completely mistaken some of the facts of what led to this fight. And there is no, I this is the situation with this fight, Ruben. It's one of the things that really drives me crazy with the world of wrestling. First of all, just because it's in a wrestling meet doesn't mean everything's legal. An assault is an assault. You can't give consent to your own assault. He got hit. Rajah got in a ring, did the his father's slam since he doesn't really have any work or record of his own. He's living off his dad's name. His dad, of course, was Quentin Rampage Jackson. He was in the A-Team movie with Bradley Cooper and Liam Neeson. He was also a champion in the UFC. He was a huge star in Pride back in the day, and just a Hall of Fame MMA fighter. And what happened was there was an issue with a beer can being thrown, but it was more of just a glancing blow. It was kind of just a thing to like egg on with the audience. There was nothing really with it. And they were supposed to be something where they gave what was somebody told Rajah that I might be missing some of the details here, but what had happened, it led to Rajah going to the ring. He slams Psycho Stu, whose real name's Stuart Smith, slams him down pretty hard, about knocks him out, and then he hits him with 21 blows to the head, just straight punches. And it was one of the more psychotic things I've seen. I've covered a lot of fights. I've seen a lot of fights in my life, whether they're, in a ring or not. And this was just absolutely one of the cheapest, dirtiest things I've ever seen in my life. When police were called to this, it was on a report of an attempted murder. That's how upset and worried the people were with Knox Pro Wrestling. Knox is ran by Rikishi. People remember Rikishi, the WWE star. He runs it. They have wrestlers that are signed to WWE ID contracts. They had an WWE ID logo on their page that's since been taken down. But it's just a terrible situation. Rajah's really put, Knox, Rikishi in a terrible position business-wise. And he might have ended a career and severely, permanently hurt somebody. He was an innocent person in all this. And it's just, there was no excuse for this behavior. And I really hope that, the thing is you can't consent to your own assault. I don't care about kayfabe work shoots, things like that, receipts, all that talk. What he did was completely wrong. I don't care if it's in a wrestling ring. I don't care if it's in an MMA ring. You can't do this kind of behavior where you just go in with the intent of seriously injuring somebody. And you can't tell me that's not what he was intending when he lands 21 blows to somebody, especially when they're unconscious. So my guess, I think, from the latest reports I've seen out of the LA Times and other places, is that they were investigating this with detectives. Their felony detective unit was investigating this. I haven't seen any incident report yet. I've checked online. He hasn't been arrested as far as I know. I've checked the LA County Sheriff's website and the inmate login earlier today. Maybe that's changed in the last few hours, but I doubt it. I think there would have been some kind of announcement. But my guess is they're probably looking at this thing, breaking it down, observing the video, because a lot of this happened on his Kick stream, which is kind of like a Twitch competitor, I guess. And they're probably breaking down what would happen on there. Legally, he's going to be in big trouble. There's so much evidence against him. Maybe unless there's something that comes out that somehow, that explains all this, he's going to be in some serious, serious trouble.
Yeah, my big question is, because there is a certain level of storyline and kayfabe that apparently this was something that was agreed upon to a certain degree, where there's a long story short, there was a miscommunication. Apparently, the wrestler was a Psycho Stu. Is that his name?
Psycho Stu. Yeah.
Psycho Stu.
Maybe it goes by Psycho,
Rajah,
but I thought it was talking about Psycho.
Yeah. Either way, he thought that Rajah was one of the wrestlers and that they were doing an angle. and he gave him smashed a beer can on his head, but it was like a worked thing, and Rajah didn't sell it because he didn't know what was going on. And so in the process, he was told, "Hey, you know what? Just we'll make a storyline out of it." From what I understand, you'll go in there, you'll hit him, give him a receipt, and then I guess at some point Rajah was like, "No, I'm actually gonna go in there and mess this guy up. Like I'm actually gonna hit him hard and really hit him." Which, for those who don't know what a receipt is, and BJ, correct me if I'm wrong, but basically it's, hey, as we're wrestling, if you hit me hard, I'm gonna hit you once back,
Yeah.
just to kind of straighten things out. It's not you go in there and you knock the guy out and then hit him 21 times full force.
Yeah.
And so part of that, I wonder how much liability Rikishi and his business partner are actually exposed to in this as well, because it seems to me that there was some level of green lighting from management on this.
Yeah. Um, See, that's another thing that's concerning. Because this was something that was supposed to be done through the promotion, and obviously they knew Rajah, they knew he was there. I mean, this is a guy who Quentin Rampage Jackson was a tough guy.
Yeah.
He was a badass, but he has said this before. He talked about, he goes, with my other kids, I saved up money for their college tuition. With Rajah, I save up his bail money. Um,
Mm,
so he's had a reputation. It's been kind of rough. I think he's only even had one professional fight. So knowing his reputation, I guess the fact that he also has some star power. I mean, I just can't imagine a situation where, unless they just thought, hey, he would understand. Hey, go in there and get maybe go in and give him a hard suplex or slam, and then that's what the receipt would be. I don't think maybe he didn't. Maybe he understood that. Maybe he didn't. I mean, there's a lot that's going to have to be undug, and there's going to be a lot of this is going to be dug through when they do the investigation. They look through all of this. What we do know is that there was assault that occurred. Unless something comes up there, they drop this case. I don't see that happening with what we've seen, the evidence we've seen on video. But there's going to be a lot of explaining to do from both the from the ownership and the people running Knox Pro Wrestling, and especially Rajah, and just an absolute. So he's got 2 fights, a win and a loss. Yeah, not much of a career at this point, but I mean, but he's Quentin Rampage's kid. I mean, he's somebody I'm surprised. I mean, he's fought in the United Fight League. It's like, I'm surprised, if he had real talent, I can't imagine why he wouldn't be in MMA or doing MMA for UFC or something like that. But it's just, it angers me to a bit when something like this happens, because people are always kind of, a receipt, like you said, okay, someone comes around, they really give you a hard punch instead of a worked punch. So what happens is you're going around, when it's your turn to get a little bit of offense, you fire back with a hard punch of your own. Or it could be with a promo. When Hangman Page cut his workers' rights promo on CM Punk, he was expecting a receipt, which is CM Punk's going to come back at him with a hard promo of his own. And what he did is he decided to go into business. They both went into business for themselves here, but he called out Page to come to the ring when Page wasn't expected to, said, okay, if you don't come to the ring, you're never getting a title shot from me. Didn't, called him a coward and basically a bunch of stuff, and that was the end of it. Well, that was definitely not the end of it. A lot of stuff happened after that, but that was also a receipt. It's basically getting back at somebody who's done you wrong or hurt you or went into business for themselves against you. And that has nothing to do with what happened in the ring with this stuff. What matters is it's assault. Kayfabe don't matter. The work don't matter. That's all crap. This comes down to whether he was assaulted or not. And from the video, obviously he was assaulted. How they dig into it, what led up to the assault, what was the company's response to be toward this? That's stuff we got to find out. And to me, that's real life. That's what the real expectations are. And this guy's lucky he's alive.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, he's missing teeth. He had flatline. I think he was in a coma for a while, for at least a day or two. The great thing is that the wrestling community has come together and raised a bunch of money for him. There is a
Yeah,
GoFundMe out there, so if you feel compelled to give, the link will be in the description of this podcast. Please, give if you can, just because this guy's not gonna be able to work for a while. Um,
yeah,
and the fallout from this is going to be huge. I mean, WWE has cut ties with the promotion, at
yeah,
least for now. We'll see kind of how long that lasts. The one thing that gets me kind of also thinking here, and I listened to somebody, it might have been Brian Alvarez, I don't remember who it was, but it was basically saying, hey, we have a lot of celebrity guest wrestlers showing up these days. Like, how is it that Jelly Roll can come in here and, perform a professional match and not really have any issues. But Rajah, who is a professional fighter, or at least has been at some point, uh, how is he not able to figure out what a worked punch is supposed to look like? And then on top of that, the guy, like, it'd be one thing if Stu actually hit him like really hard with the beer can. It was from what I
yeah.
saw, it was like it looked like the guy crushed the beer can with his hand as he was hitting him. So like it didn't look like it even touched him,
Yeah, it
And
was
then Stu
completely. It was
apologized.
complete. Yeah, it was completely a worked, goofy, no damage, no ego blow with an apology. Like there was
Multiple
no. It was
apologies.
yes, and that's also going to be considered here. And then he still goes in the ring and just and the thing is Stu's helpless at this point. He's relying when you're in this situation. Is another aspect of wrestling is you're putting your own life and safety in the hands of the people you're working with.
Yeah,
So when he does that, he gives them multiple apologies. He's expecting Rajah to be professional in return, and instead he gets assaulted because he's helpless when he's in there. When you're letting a guy, it's like 250, 60 pounds, pick you up in the air and slam you down and do the Quentin Rampage slam that we've seen through Pride and UFC all these years, you're helpless. You're at the will of this guy, and you're not fighting back. You're putting on a show. Stu was putting on a show. Rajah was trying to, assault him. That's what it looks like to me. And I don't
yeah,
see how any way they can. I don't see how any way they could try to say this was something different. I think a lot of these wrestlers that are coming out and try to, side with Jackson on this. I think it's just them chasing engagement and clicks. I don't think there's any way you can say this any way justifiable. And it's just, it's just disturbing. I mean, even if the promoters told him to go out and do this, doesn't mean he shouldn't have done it. There's no
yeah.
excuse for him to have done this.
No, I agree 100%. It was way too much. I can't think of one thing that Stu could have done that would have deserved the response that he got.
Yeah.
It's horrific. It's terrible. I wish him a speedy recovery. Um, any other thoughts on that situation?
No, I mean it's been a long time since I've seen a situation like this in a pro wrestling ring, and I don't think I've ever seen anything this bad and blatant. I mean, there's been years where guys have gotten into fights and things, especially on indie shows. Um, just different confrontations. Usually, I mean, one of them famous was the Grant Antonio, the Italian wrestler who took on Antonio Inoki over New Japan. That turned into a real fight through because one wasn't selling for the other and someone got injured, but it wasn't a full-on assault like this was. It was just, I mean, Inoki did assault the guy because he was trying to break his leg at one point. But, as far as just, especially in this reality where people, like you said, and Alvarez said, I mean, these guys are coming in the ring celebrities and they have a pretty good idea of how all this works. And they're coming in and doing pretty good. Like Jake Paul comes in and, or I can't, which Paul brothers in WWE, I can't keep them
Logan.
separate. Logan Paul's in WWE. He comes in and he's a great athlete. He's able to work because he's watched this and he has some idea of how it works. There's no way that Rajah, with his connections of fighting, which is very closely linked to pro wrestling, that he shouldn't have had some idea of how this worked. And if he didn't, that's another failure on the promoters. It's like, why is he in the ring with this guy? Um,
100% on that. And uh, I'll just ask this one last question, and this can be a brief kind of thought here. Is this worse than anything New Jack did? Do you think?
I think a lot of New Jack stuff was worse. I honestly do. I think there's maybe when he was going after the older guy in Florida, but you go back and you watch the tapes of him, like um when he was in the match with the guy who threw off the scaffolding. I can't remember his name. I shouldn't remember his name because I interviewed him before that match and after his incident with New Jack for chair shots years and years ago.
Yeah.
But he was desperately sorry for what he did to New Jack because of this blown spot that led to. I mean, it really changed New Jack's life. He had massive headaches and issues after that. It was a God, what was his name? This is what happens when you're old and you're tired and trying to remember stuff that happened 30 years ago. But if you go back and watch the match they had where
Vic Grimes?
Vic Grimes, that's it. Vic Grimes, talented guy, loved the hardcore style, bigger. I wish he would have concentrated more on just doing it, his own thing psychologically wise in the ring. But I talked to Vic after this, and he was just, he felt terrible about it. And if you go back and watch the ring, you can tell Vic is angling himself coming off that top rafter to aim for the table. You can tell that. I mean, they have they show New Jack pulling out a taser, and he's supposedly shocking, Vic Grimes, and Vic is going like this. Like all that was a work. New Jack was the greatest student of Jim Cornette. And I will say, and it's odd. It's crazy to think that because there's two individuals that have nothing in common except the fact they could talk mad trash and they could really make people mad in a hurry. And they were both gifted at it. And New Jack made this mythical creature out of himself between some shoot incidents and some bad behavior and some stuff that he mythologized about himself and was able to turn into a legend and made money off of it. And one of them was the Grimes. That was not a realist incident. He did not try to kill Vic Grimes. If he did, he would have been in prison. That was completely planned. If you go back and actually watch I was ashamed that I was surprised Dark Side of the Ring actually bought it. Like you can hear the sound effect. Zzz, 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 it sounds like it's from a Looney Tunes cartoon that they got playing over the air when he's hitting it with this taser. Vic's not, Vic's trying to sell the shots. It's the shocks. It's just, it was nothing like this. Now, did New Jack have problems fighting people sometimes in the ring? Yeah, he did go too far at times. And, he did just some things that would amount to an assault. But it was nothing to this level. I didn't like the spot with him and Vic anyway. But I just, it was dangerous from the get-go, and Vic was lucky he lived through it. But it was not a situation like this, no.
Yeah, fair enough. Well, we're gonna go on to the opposite end of the spectrum here, from an indie incident to Forbidden Door over the weekend. AEW's Forbidden Door, taking place from the O2 in London. A couple of things that I want to talk about here. I should have prepped you on this a little bit better. We go from the largest crowd for a wrestling show ever at the O2, a record that previously was held by WWE, to, I don't know if you've seen the tonight's episode of Dynamite from the 2300 arena, but it's a juxtaposition here. And obviously I know one's a pay-per-view and one's television, but in my opinion, the 2300 arena for AEW does not look good on television. I haven't seen the show in full, but from what I can tell, it makes the company look very much low rent, in my opinion, versus the Forbidden Door. Your thoughts on I'm just going to set it up that way.
So their attendance has gotten better, but they were dropping hard. I think a lot of it's because they just do not put any money into local marketing for their shows. I mean, I remember where they were running Cincinnati. This was probably a year or so ago, and the only thing I saw was they did some media quick when they came into town on some radio shows and some morning TV shows. And other than that, I just remember a big logo, a big huge billboard with an AEW logo saying they were in town. It had no announced matches on it. But I think by design they just don't really put money into that, because to them it's all about the TV deal. If they have enough
Yeah.
of a crowd to make it look good, that's where their concerns are. Um, and I also think it also speaks the way their shows, like their, the O2 Arena show, you go back to All In this last month or earlier this month, I can't remember at this point, in Texas Stadium, Texas Rangers ballpark, and that was a huge sellout. And you're looking, it's like this, I think it reflects a couple things. One, I think it's the market's kind of saturated with wrestling shows. Two, AEW has such a reputation for delivering on pay-per-views, they've become must-see events. So you're probably getting a lot of travel, a lot of people, especially when you get to new markets like Australia, or you're going back to England for the third time and you're hitting some places there. But I think at some point you're going to see where Raw, SmackDown, Dynamite, Collision are probably not going to be on the road anymore. I think it's going to happen within the next couple of years. I think you're going to see an Arena Mexico kind of like situation where everything's done like in one location, or they pick a city. I mean, this has been out in the open a little bit, but there's been thoughts of the WWE moving everything with Raw and SmackDown to Las Vegas and just doing a permanent home there for it and taking it all off the road. I think that hurts fans in a way, especially if they don't keep traveling with pay-per-views. But I think this is something that's going to happen with AEW too. And I think they're going to eventually Collision and Dynamite are going to be off the road. I just don't think they care about it. It's because the TV deals have become so huge and so important. Even with these massive gates and these huge ticket prices, that's what their focus is. And so I think for months, I mean, for a good 2 years, they struggled to draw. Even in big arenas, they're only getting 2,000 or 3,000 people. A lot of this was because of AEW's kind of just creative downslide, but I also think they were running a lot of the same markets too much. They were also, they were hitting Chicago so many times over and over and over and over, and they'd go back to Baltimore and they'd go back to the same places. But also they hit like a creative low point. They had a lot of injuries. There wasn't a hot storyline to be found. But they've grown out of that. I think they would draw better now if they went back to larger arenas. I've noticed their gates have been better at places, but like I don't know what their numbers were for the 2,300 arena show. I don't know what WrestleTix had for that. I can probably look that up real quick here. But yeah, I think it's just a problem. It's going to be something they're just going to. I think it's just a problem. They don't really care. They don't see it as a problem. It's just this is how we're going to do it. I think Tony likes the more intimate shows. It's easier to do things there. The crowd's louder. It's like going to a small basketball gym and hearing the noise in a small, compact area versus a big arena. It seems louder, it feels more intimate. I think they see the value in that. But at the same time, there is a huge change when you're seeing these shows at Texas Rangers ballpark and you're seeing them in O2 Arena or Wembley. Or wherever they do a pay-per-view, and it's like the show leading up to it's in front of 2,000 people. It's kind of a shocking visual. And I don't know if it's something they're really worried about, taking care of. Let's see tonight. Current setup tonight for the AEW show was 916 people. They set it up, they distributed, they sold it out, 916 tickets. Their year-to-date show average up till tonight. This is according to WrestleTix's Twitter account. Make sure to check it out. It's at WrestleTix, TIX.
It should be up on the screen now.
Yeah, they've 3,200 has been a show average this year. I think that's including the pay-per-views. So they're definitely hitting the smaller places. And they, Full Gear, which is on November 22nd, they're set up for 7,000 seats, right? They've already sold 5,500 tickets for that show, which shows you just how powerful they are as a pay-per-view company and just how well they deliver. All out, 10,000 set up, 10,794 set up, 9,300 tickets sold. I mean, these are credible numbers because these are shows that are a month out. But you get to like You get to like they're more, the collisions. You get to the Dynamites. It's just not the same. Let's see, Dynamite last week at Cable Dahmer Arena in Independence, Missouri. Well, actually, this is an October 15th show. They only have a setup for 2,300 people in that building, and they've sold about 934 tickets, which is a great sell when the show's still 2 months away. But it's only set up for 2,300. So obviously they're fine with it this way, even though the visual's a bit different. But I think to them it's not going to be it's not an important matter to them because eventually they're just going to be all doing this in one location.
Yeah, and that's the thing that so years ago, I asked Wade Keller this, do you ever see the professional wrestling industry doing kind of like an impact zone thing? And he was so dead set against it because, all the downsides of the impact zone with the audience getting stale and just it not, it just not having the same energy, all that stuff. It makes
Yeah,
sense. Now, I definitely do think that AEW would benefit from being in one location, or maybe they have 6 or 7 locations that they have short-term residency set up at, that they're able to come in, have a run of shows, run of tapings, not completely stale out the audience. But you're right. Tony Khan has said multiple times that one of the reasons why he doesn't promote matches on Dynamite is because he wants people to just tune into the show the night of and like use
yeah,
Twitter, use Twitter the day of to promote whatever's happening tonight. You know, where the proven formula has always been announce things in advance, let people get excited for this
yeah.
stuff. It's interesting to see. Now, I don't know. Have you seen pictures of them at the 2300 arena yet?
I haven't seen any of the show, so I haven't seen a thing.
Okay.
But
It
I mean, they would. I
it
mean, they had more people at a house show at Hobart Arena in Troy, Ohio, a year and a half ago than they had
yeah.
at 2300 Arena tonight.
It's I tweeted out that it looks like 400 people are in the building. It's such a small looking building. Um, Somebody commented or posted saying that had Tony gone and said, "Hey, this is more of a tribute to ECW. We're gonna bring down the production value a little bit." It may have looked cool. It may have been
Yeah,
something, that smaller venue may have done good for them, but they went in there with HD production, big lights. I feel
yeah,
bad for people like Adam Copeland and Christian Cage who are used to major stadiums, major arenas all over the world
yeah,
to go down to this. Like to me, it makes everything feel so much smaller than what AEW has been, and it seems like the
yeah.
step backwards,
Well, also,
in my
there's the other
opinion.
thing. Yeah, I think you're right, and I also think that it's by design, and I also think they're doing a residency. So far, every place they've done a residency, they've been getting tax breaks from that state. I haven't seen
Yeah,
anything from Pennsylvania, but I know that when they ran a series of shows in Ohio, they got tax breaks. When they were running shows in Arlington last summer, they got tax breaks. They're kind of doing the same thing that WWE says is doing, is just trying to like get local municipalities in the states that give them tax breaks and money to bring their events to the area. Um, I highly disagree with how WWE goes about it and how these cities go about it because there's no none of this stuff's allowed public how much money they're paying these WWE. It's all getting shielded under you know competition rulings and court cases that have nothing to do with billion-dollar wrestling companies getting millions to bring Royal Rumble to your town, hopefully, unless Las Vegas decides to steal it. But
yeah,
uh but it plus Tony, I realize he's a huge ECW fan. One story I
yeah,
heard about him, and I think this is pretty a familiar story, was that after he graduated, I think high school, he had great grades, and his dad offered to give him a vacation anywhere he wanted. Like you're talking beach places, um, ritzy places, and what he wanted to do was spend the summer following ECW around. So him and his dad got in a car and they followed ECW around. They went to ECW Arena. They went around following them around. Heck, I might have stood next to them at Heatwave '98 for all I know. Um, but
mm,
uh, but but yeah, that's just was how that was how much he loved ECW. So I think part of this running this arena for this amount of dates, I think part of that's nostalgia. I think part of that's, I think the company to him, he's very much into he's very much into the historical side of wrestling. He pays much more respect to it than, the Vince McMahon kind of thinking that you see in WWE, which is we're the history of it. We rewrite it the way we want to see it. Whereas
Yeah.
Tony's more of a caretaker of it.
Yeah, 100%. And it's just, I'll just say this. For me, it looks bad on television, for a show that is used to being in major arenas.
It
But
is
hey,
true. I mean, O2 Arena is huge. I mean, me and you
yeah,
talk about, we love bands, and I mean, Arlo Bridge's concert in O2 Arena is like a masterwork, and it looks like they're playing in front of 40,000, and without a wrestling ring in the middle. I'm sure they probably could draw around well over 20,000. But it's like you go from an image like that and what Forbidden Door had, and then you go to this place where they got 900 people, and you're watching in HD on a Wednesday night Dynamite. It's just it's a striking image, and I mean, I don't even have to see it. I know I can already picture it in my head. I mean, the crowd size does have an effect. There's certain
yeah,
arenas where it doesn't matter as much, but that's one where if you're running a regular set and there's a reason why that arena was set up the way it was, and there's a reason why ECW never really ran it as much as they liked. There's a lot of problems they had with it. I mean, some of that I don't even know if they've even fixed all of them. When WWE decided to do the ECW One Night Stand pay-per-views, they went up to New York to the Manhattan Center, which that was a place AEW ran, for a few shows, and the shows look gorgeous. It's just a better arena.
it's a great venue.
But yeah, I mean, it was the permanent home of Raw when the show first started, so I don't know what they'll do. I think it's just sad to me to think that we're not going to get these shows on the road anymore, or they're going to be in smaller places. And I think this is going to be coming to Raw and SmackDown at some point.
Well, TKO's kind of
It's
doing the
sad.
opposite. Yeah, I mean, TKO's kind of doing the opposite, or at least they were for a while, with taking away the smaller markets and focusing more on the bigger markets. So I won't be surprised if in 5 years they're making so much money off the TV deals, and they're trying to maximize. At that point, they're gonna or their TV deal for SmackDown, as an example, comes back with a lot less money, and they're like, oh, now we have to cut costs, so let's just cut the road. Let's just go, do this. I won't be surprised at all, if that ends up being the case.
I
Any
absolutely
final
agree
thoughts
with
on?
you. No, that I mean, just yeah, I think this is the future, is where you're just going to see smaller venues, and you're going to see, for them at least, I don't see them changing that anytime soon, especially on the TV shows. I think on the pay-per-views, maybe they'll start going to bigger places, because obviously, I mean, they're the greatest pay-per-view company to ever exist. They almost always deliver, in amazing ways. And, I just think that it's, I'm hoping this isn't the end of, because it's just, I know what WWE's thinking. I'm seeing AEW go to smaller places, even as their demand's rising. It's just worrisome if you're, just seeing shows come on the road, or the wrestling coming to your town, and, wrestling crowds are different in each town.
Yeah.
It's a shame if it'd be a shame if this stuff goes off the road. I'm hoping it's not going to happen, but I have a feeling, like you said, these TV deals are huge, so huge, it makes touring insignificant.
Yeah, I mean, Bischoff broke down the WCW numbers back in the day. He was breaking down, what pay-per-view would bring in and ticketing, and it was like TV brought in like 15% of the revenue, for WC. I mean, WCW is a little bit different because they didn't really see TV rights deal, or TV rights,
Yeah,
right fees, but I guess advertising wise was like the smallest amount of money they got coming in. So now it's the complete opposite. So it's interesting. Um,
yeah.
we real quick need to talk about DDP. We wish him a speedy recovery. So it looks like DDP is in the hospital right now with some heart issues. The post is here up on the screen right now. Diamond Dallas Page writing, minutes after waking up from a successful cardio version, I'm back stretching. My wife Paige McMahon is like, "Can you just rest for 24 hours?" Basically, last week I went into AFib. I normally wear a heart monitor when training, but for some reason didn't on this day. I pushed myself too hard, felt off, dizzy, heart racing, and well, here we are. This is my second time with AFib, irregular heartbeats in the past 3 years. I'll have a cardio ablation next month and should be good to go. And then just basically says that he's never going to not wear an Apple Watch again. Any thoughts on DDP and his health situation right now?
I don't know how a guy with AFib can be that flexible. If I tried to do that, I would be in the ER for a different reason. Probably a
Yeah,
severe hip dislocation. I mean, he's such a been such an. It's amazing that a guy who started wrestling as late had such a colossal career, and like his post career is just completely so much bigger than what he did as a wrestler. And I've met Paige a couple times. He was the first person I ever interviewed in my life, and he couldn't have been nicer or more gracious. And it's I know people with heart conditions. I got a few in my family. I think everybody does, and hopefully he gets better here soon. And he'll be kick. I'm glad to see that he's still got his yoga stretches going on and working in the DDPY.
yeah,
I think that's his way of
yeah.
telling everybody he's all right.
Yeah, it's. I mean, he look. I mean, even for somebody who's in the hospital with heart conditions, he still looks great. So good for him. Let's touch this McMahon story real quick. Got a couple things going on with McMahon. If you want, let's do this. Let's do the McMahon traffic incident and then also the Janelle Grant medical records deal.
Sure.
McMahon was in a car accident last month, going excessively fast, hit a woman, rear-ended her, and it looks like he's seeking for the charge to be dismissed. And then Janelle Grant's medical records got leaked, accidentally leaked. So go ahead, take it away, Mr. Bethel.
So, okay, Vince McMahon was in a car crash. He rear-ended a woman from New York. She was driving in a BMW. He was driving a Bentley in excess of 85 miles per hour. He was charged with 2 traffic violations. One was driving recklessly over the speed of 85 miles per hour, which is a very, very serious traffic charge. He was also charged with following too closely. In other states, in Ohio, that's called assured clear distance. Basically, you're tailgating people, and you end up causing an accident because you're not giving them enough space. I do know the woman's car that he hit was totaled. I think that's something that Vince McMahon's insurance company is working out with this woman. So they had a hearing yesterday at 9 a.m. This morning, I went onto the website to try to access the records, but they have been statutorily kind of made unavailable, which means they've been locked from public view. You can't go to his docket anymore. You can no longer go on and see what his charges are, which is highly unusual. His lawyer also made he also requested from the court a pretrial probation for McMahon. What this would do he would do some driving classes, maybe some other work. But essentially, if he were to be allowed this, it would drop the 2 traffic violations that he has, and he would basically be fine and he would walk scot-free. I don't think this is going to sit well with a lot of people, especially with his reputation as a driver. This was not his first time in a serious accident. I mean, it's pretty bad when there's a whole classification of Vince McMahon stories about him driving recklessly with numerous different talents. And I think there's also concerns about just how tight of a hold he has in Stamford. His family, the McMahon empire has been based in Stamford for 50, 60 years. And it's just a question of like, how much influence does he have there? When Linda McMahon ran, when she was announced to be being considered for being the Secretary of Education in the cabinet, the paper up there normally does a great job. What they ran was essentially a PR piece from the Heritage Foundation on why she should be named to the cabinet. which is fine, but where was the, I don't know if they ever ran a piece in opposition to it. I mean, and I don't, you know, you can talk to anybody that's a Republican or a Democrat or either side. I mean, Linda McMahon is not qualified to be the Secretary of Education. She's only there because her and her estranged husband are friends of Donald Trump.
Yeah.
So it gets into questions of favoritism and other issues that way. And I just think that, you know, this is a situation where this was a highly traveled, it was the 90-year-old road. It had wooden guardrails. The debris from the accident also damaged a car in the other lane. One woman's car was totaled. I know that somebody at the scene said, a cop said, if, because I did talk to some people at the scene of the accident, I was able to track them down, and basically said, the police said if she would have got hit, rather, if she got hit straight on in the rear bumper, if he would have hit her at a different angle, it could have been a much worse accident. She could be dead. And then you're looking at vehicular manslaughter. And the fact is that he was still driving in a way to cause this. So the fact that he could walk away from this with no, you know, nothing at all is kind of just, it's disappointing. But, you know, this seems to be something he's been very adept at doing it, very apt at being able to do over the last, you know, 40 or 50 years. You know, he just never, you know, I mean, people can disagree, and you know, the Grant case is in court. He's got a chance to prove his way. You know, he's got a chance to prove his, you know, he's got a case he can make there. You know, he was also under federal indictment, but it's like with the traffic accident, it's like you can't even get this guy to get his license up. You know, I mean, it just shows you to just, it doesn't make you feel well if you're one of the normal people out there and you somehow get in an accident with somebody that's got a lot of money, you know.
Yeah.
And Vince has been that guy. I mean, the stories about him even abusing state troopers and mouthing off to them and driving away fast and, you know, throwing gravel at their car. And I mean, a lot of this stuff's exaggerated because that's what wrestlers do and they talk about. But at the same time, I mean, his traffic problems have been well known. So the fact that he could possibly walk away from something this serious, you know, without losing his license or something, is just kind of ridiculous.
Yeah, no, 100%. And then I don't know if I'm going to put it back up on the screen here real quick for those who are watching this, the podcast. This is what Vince's car looks like after the accident.
Yeah, I mean, that's I can tell you what's going on here. Yeah, it's the front. That's the whole front passenger side. It got sheared off all the way into the engine compartment. I think it might have been a hybrid. I can't tell by looking at it, but the front wheel's gone. The front suspension assembly on the passenger side is gone. There's this, you know, the complete fender's gone, sheet metal's gone. I mean, he just sheared off a good chunk of his own car.
I mean, I can only imagine what would have happened if, like you said, he would have hit her just a little bit in a different way, you know.
Yeah.
It's just insane. It's just insane. And then
At the time of day, yeah. Go ahead.
Good.
I was gonna say at the time of day he was traveling, and I mean, this traffic's also been another thing I've covered relentlessly, and also I'm a gearhead, so there's just some things I know about. But it's just like, it's just reckless and stupid. There's no reason to be driving like that in that kind of situation. I'm all fine if you can find a clear spot on the interstate. You want to clear out the carbon, as they would say. You know, fine, that's fine. You know, if you want to go to the drag strip, that's fine. If you got a back road, you know, and you want to go, you know, see how your 0-60 time is, that's fine. But doing this like constantly when you're driving on a busy road, it's sociopathic behavior.
Yeah, 100%. Another bit of Vince-related news to a certain degree. Janelle Grant is suing. Is it WWE's doctor?
So this is what happened is with this case. So Janelle Grant has filed a bill of discovery complaint against Dr. Carlon Coker. He was a doctor for Vince McMahon. McMahon took Janelle Grant to see him multiple times. This has become part of her complaint in the federal court. She has been suing Coker to get her medical records. Well, in a separate case, Coker is sued Ann Callis, who's one of Grant's attorneys, for slander, you know, things like that, in a federal suit. Well, a couple days ago, during a filing, they placed some of Grant's medical records on the Pacer website, which meant that they were up for public view, which is
Yikes.
insanely considering considering the stakes of this case and what this case is about and where it originated and how it relates to the McMahon complaint in the federal court system. It's just either it is extremely careless or stupid or something else. I don't know. It's ridiculous that this has happened. This poor woman's been through so much, and in the Callus suit, I haven't really been following as much because I think it's kind of a side thing to everything else. I don't know how Coker's a public figure. He's been a star in documentaries. He's been on TV shows. They're trying to argue that he's not in some of this. But at the same time, they're arguing, this meets the malice standard stuff as Callus has said about him. But I don't think it, we'll see if that pans out. But the thing is like putting her medical records up as part of the, filing in her suit, not having them sealed. I guess they were up for a while until the judge finally got them sealed. But it just shows how reckless this has been, this whole entire case.
Yeah.
And it's disappointing. And I mean, if I'm Coker, the liability that opens you. I mean, I'd find an attorney maybe. You're telling them to fire a new clerk or somebody to follow your stuff. It's just strange.
Yeah, 100%. Well, that does it for us here on this episode of Rent Free. Make sure to follow along, subscribe to the YouTube channel this is on. We are going to have this up on Spotify and Apple Podcasts and all that very soon. I promise you that. I'm still working on it. But we're going to have another episode out here in just a couple of days talking about more AEW stuff. It's John Cena, Chris Jericho, a bunch of other stuff, so make sure to stick around. BJ, any final thoughts before we sign off for this episode?
Listen to the Christine Brennan interview. Go to Multimedia Mouth on YouTube. Ruben's got a ton of amazing stuff on there. Ruben's the guy that's making all this possible. So whether if you like my content and the news I deliver, thank Ruben for making this possible. If you hate my stuff, you can blame Ruben for that too. If you can blame him for putting my face out there on the internet with it. But anyway, that's all I got to say. Keep checking out our stuff. You're going to have more to come in the next few days.
Yeah, check out bbethel.substack.com and multimediamouth.com as well. We'll be back with another episode here in just a few.
Thank you.